the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour then, we'll see what's making the headlines with the former Labour Special Advisor, Ayesha Hazarika, and the Sun's political editor, Tom Newton-Dunn. Good to see you both. Busy times, lots to talk about, so let's take a look at the front pages, starting with the Eye. Reports on the warning from the EU that the Brexit clock is ticking and that Britain could be left without a deal. The Telegraph, though, suggests the Prime Minister wants to still enter talks with the threat of Britain leaving without that trade deal. Staying on Brexit, The Times says Chancellor Philip Hammond believes Britain needs to stay in the customs union. The Guardian reports on Theresa May's meeting with the French president. The Prime Minister also featuring in the Metro as they report she may need extra time before sealing a deal with the DUP. Uber chief executive Travis Kalanick's decision to step down indefinitely leads the Financial Times amid a damning report into the company's management. SES troops are reportedly going undercover to help stop more terror attacks. That's in the Mirror. According to the Daily Express, elderly people who take a daily aspirin are 10 times more at risk of fatal bleeding. The NHS is the focus of tomorrow's Daily Mail, as they say thousands of medics are now being trained cheaply. And the Daily Star has the latest updates on reality programme Love Island. Indeed so. So Ayesha and Tom are here. Back to the day's main news, perhaps.
Do we have to?
Well, no, Love Island, it might be better.
It's your list, you choose.
Going to cheer the viewers up a bit more than what we've got for them.
Absolutely. So as if life wasn't hard enough for Theresa May, the EU leaders have had a right go, haven't they? Reminding everybody that the Brexit clock is ticking, and in fact 3 months of 2 years has already gone.
Oh, they certainly have. Michel Barnier made the very astute point today that 3 months of your 2 years has already gone, and actually it's not even 2 years. It's not that much longer than about 15 months now, because autumn 2018 is seen as the deadline because it takes 6 months to get all the other parliaments to ratify the deal. So the time is unbelievably tight.
So why did we issue that Brexit letter when we did?
Because, quite frankly, we voted to leave the EU 9 months before then. So Theresa May was already, 9 months into a decision, and she had to get on with it. Then, of course, she called a general election, which wasted 7 entire weeks of potential negotiating time, as we now know, for absolutely zero result. I mean, she just went backwards.
She's burnt time, she's wasted money. This election cost the state, was it £130 million? The clock is ticking on Brexit. It's like when you call an emergency plumber out and they're like, they've got the clock on and they're still getting stuff out the back of the van, basically, and you're like, do we start now? And they're like, no, we need to now move to the sort of the different fare. The whole thing is an absolute nightmare, and I think anybody, regardless of actually what side of the argument you're on, for people, and I think the majority of people are a bit like, let's just get on with it. This is not confidence inspiring at all.
No, it's worse than that. It's the plumber saying, I've got to go and get a spare part, and that could be some distance away. If you take a look at the Times, because we now no longer know what Brexit looks like.
Well, that's the point. So negotiations start, the Prime Minister confirmed in Paris like next week. Even if she's got 7 days to go, you have the most extraordinary situation where no one anymore, I think the Tory party sort of kind of agreed what sort of Brexit they were going to go for beforehand. Now, no one agrees at all. Harder Brexit, softer Brexit. Does the Prime Minister tone down everything she's been asking for? Almost everyone in the Conservative Party, certainly on the Remain side of it, was screaming for that today, from John Major to William Hague to even Michael Gove, suggesting very interestingly that we need to have another look for a greater consensus on this. The Times has a very interesting angle. But let me briefly explain the customs union, which is obviously the bit about free trade within the union.
Please, slowly.
Please do, Tom.
It's really tedious, but it's important because the customs, there's the single market, and then there's the customs union, which is how do goods pass around without tariffs. That, whether we stayed in or out of the customs union, was the single biggest fault line in the cabinet as they were rowing, really in the second half of last year, what to put in the Brexit deal.
Right.
The Brexiteers won and decided, therefore, that we would have to leave the customs union, because leaving the customs union is the only thing that allows us to go and make big trade deals with America, China, whoever we think we can, because staying in the customs union means the EU has to do all our trade deals for us. Philip Hammond, apparently according to the Times, is about to come out the blocks tomorrow, or at some very, very soon stage, and declare, no, actually, we need to stay in the customs union. And that, if he does that, is absolutely enormous. It totally unpicks the entire Brexit package because it means we won't be able to run around the world and make our own trade deals any longer, which is, after all, the whole point.
So Liam
of
Fox
Brexit.
is out of a job, is he, therefore?
Largely, yes. That's the conclusion.
But it just shows you that really the government is not in good shape to crack on with these incredibly important negotiations. There really is deep division. You've got Philip Hammond saying one thing. In the Telegraph, you have Theresa May saying, no, I am sticking to my Brexit blueprint. I am going to stick to my thing on leaving the single market and absolutely walking away from the customs union. And actually, no deal is better than no deal is better than a bad deal. And I just think the country, for a party that went into this general election saying, strengthen our hand on Brexit, we want to provide, strength and stability. This is just an absolute genuine shambles. And it's so dangerous because Theresa May is not just negotiating Brexit. She's going to be negotiating her deal with the DUP, which is not done yet. She's going to be negotiating with her backbenchers who are still seething, despite her very warm kind of reception she got at the 1922 committee. Tory MPs are absolutely furious. So she's going to be negotiating on three fronts.
Oh, and she's
now.
writing a Queen's speech as well, by the way.
Yeah, if they get the goat skin in time. Obviously, I have to say, it really is the stuff of... I mean, Amanda Iannucci, put down your pen. There is no way you could even, in your wildest dreams, sort of, conjure up such an absolute joke.
To be fair today, she kind of manned up, didn't she? She had to take a pause, get back to work, despite speaking slightly too early in the House of Commons, despite dropping her papers with Emmanuel Macron in Paris. She braved it out and even made a joke in the House of Commons about the Speaker being re-elected. At least somebody got allowed.
But do you know that joke? Sorry, I just want to say about that joke. I mean, look, not a bad joke.
It wasn't a very funny joke.
Well, it wasn't.
She shouldn't be making jokes.
Not a bad joke, but, sometimes when you do a joke, you've got to have your side with you. And, her side looked absolutely... People,
but
many
she's been
of them
politically humiliated
face.
and she got back to work today, is sort of what I'm saying.
But so she should... I don't think she should deserve, like, a biscuit or a medal for doing that. She is clinging on. She called this election. I just think how embarrassing would it have been for her to go to the Queen. The Queen's seen 13 Prime Ministers who've done all these amazing things, and she's like, here I am, limping back without a majority, plunging the country into absolute chaos.
That, by the way, wasn't the only blunder of the day for the Prime Minister. When she stood up at the dispatch box, she stood up too early. Speaker got elected, dragged to the chair, all the pomp and ceremony. Then Theresa May jumped up to make her speech, and unfortunately she had to stop and sit down again. Because the Sergeant of Arms hadn't yet put the mace up on the table, which means she wasn't allowed to speak. So she had to sit there. So she had to say, I was sitting in the chamber, the gallery of the chamber, when she made that joke, and it actually did go down quite well. Funnily enough, what she did last night when she went to the 1922 committee is do an almighty fess up. I screwed this entire thing up, it's my mess, and I'm going to fix it. And also, again, a bit more self-deprecation in the Commons today. She is at an all-time low, perhaps for almost any Prime Minister there's been. She has zero authority, and therefore she really has to grovel pretty much on a daily basis, which I think she's doing and is really the only way back for it, if there is. But just going back to the Telegraph for a second, going back to the press preview for a second. Telegraph has it that you've got Philip Hammond and the Remainers on one side wanting to unpick the entire package, stay in the customs union. Theresa May, the Telegraph says is sticking to it and no compromise and no surrender. I'm here to tell you, I don't think the Telegraph is right about this, because I also spent the entire day Westminster watching and talking to people number 10, talking to people around the Commons, MPs, ministers, the like. Actually, Theresa May has said not a thing today on the Brexit package. Very, very interestingly at all. Michael Gove...
Not in Cabinet?
So the political... so the Cabinet met today. They didn't discuss Brexit very much. They discussed the Queen's speech. The subcommittee on Brexit, the Cabinet subcommittee on Brexit, meets tomorrow, and that's where the fireworks are going to absolutely fly.
And who's in that?
It's 7 Remainers and 7 Leavers, plus the Scotland, Irish and Welsh secretaries. So it's quite finely balanced, and this is where they'll have this ding-dong. But interesting, Theresa May, no matter what the Telegraph would like her to have said no such thing at all. There was a very bland holding statement. Well, we're listening, we want to talk to people, etc. And the reason for that is she cannot take a position on this because she has zero authority. Instead, the Cabinet are now going to battle it out.
I mean, whether
this almighty mess and blood on the walls.
Look, whether the Telegraph is right or wrong, the one thing that we know to be true is absolutely, as you say, she has got no authority whatsoever. The whole thing is an absolute mess. And the thing about negotiating is, you have to go in, you're a better negotiator if you go in with a strong body language and a confidence. She can't have that right now.
But it works both ways, doesn't it? For those in Parliament who want a softer Brexit, it only takes a few of those Tories who desperately want a clean Brexit to make life difficult for her if she abandons some of the things.
So this is what it all comes, absolutely right. This is what all comes down to, the parliamentary arithmetic. So it's all well and good, you wanting this and wanting that, wanting a hard Brexit, wanting to keep out of the customs union. The truth of the matter is, and we crunched the numbers at the Sun on this the other day, we believe there is a parliamentary majority of around 45-50 for a soft Brexit. Now that's a very unassailable figure. There is no chance Theresa May's original Lancaster House speech, form of Brexit, is going to get through the House of Commons. And it's not even the deal. So the Queen's speech happens next week with the Great Repeal Bill, which is all those different laws, you know, thousands of little small pieces of law they have to pass to prepare the country for Brexit. Every single one of those is going to get unpicked and massacred, quite frankly, by the opposition, by Labour, etc., who want a softer Brexit. So she's going to have to shift her position on something.
So David Davis has spelt out, hasn't he, this week, that the British people voted for control of our borders, as in freedom of movement, you know, control of our laws and control of our money. But he's just guessing,
and control
isn't he?
of our trade.
Well, does anybody really know what we voted for?
No, I mean, that's the thing. It's generally pretty fuzzy. Lots of people speculate that they have the sort of divine wisdom on what people... I think it's fair to say people, you know, well, we're coming out of the EU. I don't think you can stop Brexit, and I think everybody kind of accepts that. I think certainly freedom of movement was a big part of the discussion, but how much freedom of movement is going to be the issue? And, you know, everything else is sort of up for grabs. I don't think people voted, you know, to send the economy off a cliff edge, to sort of hamper businesses, be they small business, medium or large businesses. I think actually the public will take quite a pragmatic view. I suspect Remainers and Leavers, so the majority will actually be quite pragmatic around it.
But the customs union, does it have any impact on freedom of movement?
Not on freedom of movement. No, that's the trade deals bit. But I think you can answer, you know, what type of Brexit did the public vote for? There actually are some clues in what the Tory and Labour manifestos said. They didn't clearly vote in very large numbers for Theresa May's version of Brexit, or, you know, 43% of the country might have, but 40% of them voted Labour and didn't on all the other parties. So there was no majority for Theresa May's Brexit. However, look at Labour's Brexit and the Tory vote together, you get 83%. You can certainly argue that 83% of the country voted to leave the single market, because that's in the Labour manifesto.
To be fair, most people didn't read the Labour Party manifesto, and Labour didn't talk a lot about Brexit during their campaign.
No, they tried incredibly hard not to.
Yeah.
Well, we never made it back. There were also, let's be honest, and I was out doing a lot of stuff around the country, Brexit was not the #1 issue on the doorstep for people. What was on the doorstep was the health service, cuts to education, and actually social care. You know, Brexit was not the sort of burning issue, and I think we have to be careful about that.
Just very, very quickly, if you don't mind, the Financial Times, another picture of Theresa May at the top in Paris, but down in the middle section there, Cameron turns heat on May with a call to consult Labour for a softer Brexit. What has he said and where?
This is, he said it in Poland, actually, of course. He doesn't say stuff in Britain anymore, because he's too busy making far, far too much money in Poland to possibly give a speech to the likes of us.
He's worried about freedom of his own movement in terms of his ability.
Before it all stops,
quick,
get the speeches in quick before the gates...
Just quickly, we must take a break.
Quickly, he has joined a very long queue behind William Hague, Michael Gove and John Major to say Theresa May now has to start talking to Labour to come up with a consensus Brexit. And
that is one positive thing about the result on Thursday night. I think the Labour result, the hung Parliament, has stopped a hard Brexit.
I hear people throwing things at the television that you say
Enough
that's
already.
Good news for some. Yes, indeed. Plenty more still to come, including could a new law prevent Donald Trump from deleting his tweets? We'll have full cover of that story after this. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me this evening, Ayesha Hazarika and Tom Newton-Dunn. Welcome back to you. Let's go to The Guardian, shall we? Still talking about Brexit. The French president says compromise is possible, but time is of the essence, that meeting between May and Macron in Paris. But you've picked Diane Abbott, who got roundly supported today, didn't she, in the House of Commons by Jeremy Corbyn, with a thumping majority. What she had to say in The Guardian?
Well, obviously, Diane Abbott became quite infamous during this election campaign because of an interview on LBC where she hadn't kind of got the numbers right, and then she did receive a huge amount of abuse because of that. And then there was this whole thing that kind of spiraled, and she went on and did a few other interviews, and then she decided to pull out. Now, she said it was on health grounds, and today she has revealed that she's actually been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 2 years ago.
That was out of control during the election campaign, she said.
And she said that the pressure of the election campaign, and one can imagine that's a highly, highly stressful situation to be in. So she's sort of come out and said, look, this is the reason. There was a lot of speculation around, why she had stepped aside. I mean, I felt that, look, that interview was not a great interview, and I have worked with MPs where from time to time you do have a bad interview. But I did feel the kind of level of abuse that she got because of it, she was sort of judged at a far higher level, I felt.
She was trying to be Home Secretary. That's how she was being judged, surely.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you saw her Twitter feed. I think some of the racism and the misogyny went far beyond just, do you want to be Home Secretary?
But that's
lunatics on Twitter, not the Tory party.
I didn't say it was a Tory party.
She is.
Well, I mean, I think there was quite an aggressive campaign against her. But certainly, from what I saw on social media, I mean, I think Diane has always had a lot of this level of abuse, and it was just interesting that she's now come out and said, actually, this is why it was.
Does that square with the hacking story we had before the election, that she was a hoaxer, emailed her pretending to be Seamus Milne, I think it was?
Possibly it doesn't, no, because in that email that she allegedly sent to this hoaxer, the guy was pretending to be the Labour Party communications boss, and she said, asking for, we need more evidence on your illness for why we had to pull you from Women's Hour. And Diane Abbott responded, look, I've had diabetes for years, I've managed it perfectly well. Having diabetes is no reason for me to pull out of Women's Hour. Now, of course, the argument of that is, well, she may not know that she's not able to perform as well. She may think she can perform better than, she actually is. But one thing about the Tories, I remember on the campaign, we were writing quite a lot about Dunn at the time on The Sun, because she has some pretty strong views in the past that we thought our readers wouldn't like at all, such as sympathy for the IRA and the like, which did need quite hefty exposure and some pretty heavy questioning about if she wants to be Home Secretary. She also voted against all the
all right, Tom, you need to go through the whole thing again in terms of, like, let's start slugging.
But this looks like a bid for her to return to...
Yeah, I think the door is open for her.
The second that Theresa May and the Tories heard that she was ill, or Labour said she was ill, they stopped all the attacks dead. And Theresa May made a point of saying, I'm not going to go after her. And the likes of us were asking in press conferences, do you believe this? What do you think? And she said, look, if she's ill, she's ill. I wish her Godspeed. So actually, I don't think it had a huge amount to do with the Tory party. Clearly, Diana has got a point to make here, because she is unwell. She has a horrible condition. But I don't necessarily think that should excuse some of the hard questioning when people didn't know about that, if she's running for Home Secretary.
But I think there is a question about, I don't know about the ins and outs of the exact Conservative campaign, but there was an absolute vicious, I mean, Diane Abbott, that interview was not her finest hour. I fully agree with you.
And the one with Dermot.
But you could argue, I don't think she looked well when she did that interview with Dermot, quite
But are people supposed to know that, though? Is that supposed to be
No, but we're
fault?
finding out now. But I just think there is a level of vitriol in politics now when you do come after somebody. Yeah, of course, like, go after somebody to a certain degree, but Tom, there is a level of vitriol which I think is quite ugly, actually.
We have not done any of the stories we promised, including the one about Trump's tweets. The US Attorney General obviously also giving evidence tonight, but we'll do that at 11:30, shall we?
Yes. Better come back, yeah.
Better come back. We will see you then. Thank you very much indeed.